all systems are down. There's a huge amount of graft and corruption. Kids are being neglected. Their civil rights are being trodden upon.
This is Taya Grimm and Stephen Janis reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland. The crumbling Baltimore City school system faces yet another setback. School CEO Sonia Santalisi says the $129 million deficit is due to declining enrollment and generous teacher contract. The red ink is prompting cutbacks, with layoffs planned for over 1,000 employees, including teachers. But questions about money usually land here at North Avenue. It's the home of the city's school bureaucracy, which some say isn't just bloated, but wasteful. As part of our ongoing investigation into the details of how the city does and does not work, we have an exclusive interview with a city teacher who peels back the curtain on spending and reveals just how bad city schools are before the cuts. And he also offered solutions on how to serve teachers and students better. We disguised his identity in order to protect him from retaliation. Now, Stephen, there are monies that were generated by the casinos that were supposed to be allotted to the school budget. What happened to them?
Well, as an excellent article by Luke Broder from the Baltimore Sun pointed out, of the $1.7 billion that has been taken in by casinos, very little of it has gone to fund increases in funding for school, which is where the money was promised, which just shows the city is always in a rock and a hard place. We have casinos, but the city's actually experienced budget cuts since the casinos have opened, so it hasn't worked out for the city. You put on top of that the tax breaks like the TIFs, which technically reduce the city's overall assessed value and thus reduce the amount of money that the school gets from the state based on funding mechanisms, and the school system is actually suffering even more.
Now, Mayor Catherine Pugh just agreed in the consent decree that she was going to allot a fair amount of money for the Baltimore City Police Department. What does this mean for schools?
Well, this again shows how Baltimore continues to fund policing, but schools are always secondary. I mean, the biggest part of the city budget goes to police funding, about $500 million. A fraction of that, 200-something million, goes to teachers. Recently, the mayor said she was allotting $3 million to hire 100 more police officers to fill patrol positions. Right. Meanwhile, they're going to cut $129 million from school. It's not that they're going to cut, it's that the school has a deficit that they can't pay for. So if the school system was funded as much as the police department, there wouldn't be a budget deficit. So clearly, we're still in that dilemma where we're paying more to police than we are to teach.
And now let's go to our interview with our whistleblower.
I mean, I'll give you a typical day. The bell will ring. Many kids won't come to class. They'll be in the hallway. There's supposed to be staff and administrative staff to deal with that, but the kids are still in the hallway. By first or second period, I'll already smell pot in my room, in the hallway. There's no censorship of any language. What I hear all day, I hear shit, bitch, motherfucker, nigger, all day, and every combination of that, all day, every day. They'll talk to the teacher that way, to other kids. There's no consequence for that. So truancy is a big problem in and outside of the school. No discipline, no consequences. And we haven't even gotten to academically where the kids are. So they tested the iReady test this year. 97% of the seniors were reading on not on 12th grade level. 97%. Only 3% of the kids were reading on a 12th grade level, and the average grade level was about 5th, 6th grade. They are, in all fairness, they are over-tested. I think we had like 24 weeks of testing this year. So they have these testing windows in which they're supposed to carry on this test, but they had all the kind of pre-tests you have in every class in the beginning when you come in, so teachers can see where you are. Then they have iReady testing. Then they have HSA testing in October. They have HSA testing again in December. They have PARC testing in the beginning of the year also. Then they have PARC testing again right after the holiday with HSA testing again. Then they have PARC testing and iReady testing and HSA testing, or whatever new test comes down the pipeline, again in the end of the year, which basically destroys the fourth quarter. So it's testing all the time. And there's other tests too, standardized tests. So that's a big problem also.
So how does that limit your ability to teach? I mean, or what does it do to your ability to teach?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a huge disruption in your day. Kids are in and out of the class, and that lends to them being more truant because now they have an excuse to run around some more. The stat I just gave you on the reading, well, if all your testing is reading comprehension, so that's less time for instruction. The kids are lacking reading skills. Then they're being tested for the reading skills, which we already know they're lacking. So of course we know they're not going to perform well on the test. I mean, the kids are, and which is unfair, and you can't use other types of metrics because the state or the city has invested in these, these private Princeton Review and stuff like that. They're getting all this money from all over the country to give you these tests.
Tell us about the physical environment.
There's mountain rat feces in every room. I've been taking pictures. You just wouldn't believe there's feces everywhere. So, if you clean your desk off, you come the next day, there'll be mouse feces on your desk again. I've had an open window in my room for 4 years at the particular school I'm at, and I've been in 3 different rooms. So the heat, inevitably there'll be no heat for numerous days throughout the year, or it'll be blistering hot and they won't close the school. So you're always cold in the wintertime. And of course the kids won't perform at all, when it's cold and hot like that. There are lots of kids truant and unsupervised. And a lot of our kids are very, very challenged. So I'll give you an example. Like the 3rd or 4th week of school, I had a kid come in who had been put out of the school, I found out later, a couple years before, for his behavior. It's the first day to my class. It was 4 or 5 weeks into the school year, and he didn't have a uniform. I said, I have to stop you, where's your uniform? And the first response was, I'll fucking shoot you in the face for asking for his uniform. And, a couple of the other kids were walking down the hallway, and they just kind of stood in his way and kind of backed him up. Didn't even say anything, just backed him up. They're like, you don't want to mess with that particular teacher. He actually, I wrote him up. Administrator got him. He ran out of the administrator's room when he was talking to the kid's parents and tried to attack me again, ran to my room. The administrator had to tackle the boy out of the doorway because he's in the doorway ready to charge in to try to fight me while I'm teaching a class. And all I asked him, the only words I had with him were just need to know where your uniform is. Right. So it's very hostile. There is no line between adult and student. They're entering into rooms they're not supposed to be in unsupervised. They'll be in a teacher's lounge or a teacher's office or on someone's computer, and always somewhere where they're not supposed to be. There'll be, how you have those floor outlets in offices? There'll be like open outlets with the wiring sticking out. There's notices in the main office about workers who are coming in to work in the school. Be careful about the lead and asbestos. But if you look around the school, there's pipes that the wrapping's off. There's holes, tiles, asbestos stuff. One of the administrators' offices, the floor on it was asbestos tiles that had mold, and people were starting to she was already having respiratory problems with some of the other students. They finally ripped that up and supposedly replaced that. I never saw anybody with hazmat suits or the proper equipment to bring asbestos down out of the air. You get the idea. The room I was in, my first 8-9 years teaching, the woman had died of cancer, and that room had 3 or 4 times the asbestos level because the EPA had tested it. And I had called the EPA, which made the principal very upset because I wanted to get it tested again, and it had very high levels of asbestos in it. So, teachers and students are being exposed to that kind of thing. I guess another 10 or 20 years, if I come down with asbestosis, you'll know why, right? It's that bad. You can't drink the water. The Clean Air and Water Act, 73, said you got to be able to look left and right in any school, and water is freely and readily available. You'd be lucky if you could find the water jugs in our school because you can't drink any of the water. There's signs saying you can't drink the water, but you can wash your hands with it. And I'm thinking, I'm pretty educated. If I don't swallow it, but I can absorb it through my skin, I guess that's okay for the lead water, right? So there's no water readily available. Kids are constantly looking for water and they're thirsty. And if you get there, the cups may be gone, or there's no water in the jug because the jug hasn't been replaced. So you got to search for water. And of course that runs into, do you have a pass? You're out of class too much. Kids are going to get distracted. There's other kids in the hallway, causes other encounters. And we have people that cover all the hallways, but hallways aren't clear. We have plenty of extra administrators. They're not allowed to discipline anybody. They have to literally get permission from North Avenue to do anything close to a suspension or anything like that. They can't even have in-school suspension because it only can be up to 45 minutes because you're keeping a child from his or her education. Because they don't want black boys to have, or minorities in general, but especially black males, to have high rates of suspension. I don't know if you saw the report last week that black kids are suspended 4 or 5 times as much as what. So of course, to keep this down, this is why they don't report all the violence in the schools, because we don't want to be known as dangerous schools. We're the 19th most dangerous city in the world. You would think that, common sense would tell you the school system's probably pretty rough.
So what is it right now at this point do you think that's critical about? What's going on specifically that's critical that people need to know that they don't know?
I think that they need to understand that all systems are down. There's a huge amount of graft and corruption. Kids are being neglected. Their civil rights are being trodden upon. Teachers, the staff, very stressful, hostile environment. There's no discipline. The code of conduct is a travesty. The law is not enforced. People are not safe. I mean, I could go on and on and on. It's just, and I wish it was just one school and you could clean it up. But it's the whole system. The whole system is that way, and you could pick any random teacher and bring them in here, and if they were comfortable sharing with you, they would say the same things I'm saying. So I'm not special in that regard at all.
Now, you said that you were saved by school in some way, or did I mishear you? Can you tell me about that?
Well, when I was younger, I was in the system in New York, and I couldn't read. And like a lot of these kids, I tested very low. I think it was at that point it was like 1 point above retarded, because that's when they had the IQ tests, right? Which now we've thrown out. That's just because I couldn't read. So a typical kid here will act out in some way because he or she's seeing something terrible at home, and they make them special ed. Well, it's kind of what happened with me. They were like, okay, he's woefully deficient, blah, 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 blah. But they worked with me on my reading. And I went from, at 8 or 9, not being able to read to, I think the first book I completed was Shogun, which was like, 10 inches thick and little tiny print. So that got me excited, and they worked with you, right? So I was a kid that was kind of a product of the street, been displaced, and public school had activities. I was there from early morning. I was there for like 12 hours a day. By the time I got done with extracurriculars and sports, so I might have gone to, soccer practice, and then I might have had jazz band in the evening. So it kept me busy.
So what are the consequences if this stuff isn't addressed? What do you see?
Last year at this time, the consequence was the city burned. You can't disenfranchise people. The kids might be woefully deficient academically, but they're not stupid. They can see what's going on. I think you're going to see more what you saw last year with the riots. You have people who they want to do well. They know it's a dead end. I mean, for years my kids were telling me, I'm not going to make it past 25. They don't have the skill sets. They already have their own issues. Obviously the home is broken up in this country. When I was coming up, single parent families were more the exception, not the norm. Now it's the opposite. If a kid has both parents, they don't tell anybody. It's almost like a stigma to have your parents or people in your family that love you, that you're taken care of. Because everybody's got to be miserable. Misery loves company. That's kind of the attitude. My life's messed up, so I'm gonna make sure everybody around me's life is messed up. So I think that we've created this underclass of a majority of the population. Remember, 80% of people get welfare are white people. There's a lot of poor white people. This is not just a minority thing. The administration is there to support us, not to, look over our shoulder like Big Brother and try to determine if we misstepped in some way and try to, mete out some sort of consequence for the teachers for being terrible and blame the ills of society on our failure. I may see a kid in a semester. I may see a kid just from September to December or the end of January. I might have a semester class. And somehow when they get to me, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, it's my fault about their whole life, right? So it's like, I may not even see the kid because many of my kids are truant. So I might have very few encounters with this kid, but somehow I'm responsible for everything that occurred in this kid's life and every action that has happened. I think that, you get into these situations where the administrators are they're not allowed to make any decisions. They're micromanaged. And so, of course, it's the pecking order. They come down on the teachers because they're being squeezed. They can't solve anything. They're not allowed to have solutions. Any of the talented principals under any of these CEOs get fired. The moment they can't be micromanaged. So they'll say, be creative, do all these things, blah, 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 blah. But then when they do, they fire them. They're in U.S. News World Report or on CNN. It's amazing what you're doing at that school. Next thing you know, the principal's fired. You know, kids will come out of juvenile detention and they'll say school is just like jail. Imagine you come to school every day and you're wanded. Every kid in the schools I've been in, they're wanded with a metal detector every day. Their belongings are searched and they're basically frisked and wanded every day. That's how they start their day. They're searched and wanded at the school. You're creating these people who are ignorant of the world around them. They don't have the skill sets to work. See, my big thing about school is not college. It's work. We're preparing interactive citizens to be part of their democracy. In other words, they're in charge. They need to vote. They need to be going to jury duty. They need to pay taxes. If they don't like something, they need to be able to go to city council and petition the city council and make their voice heard, or run for office, or support somebody, or do something about their surroundings, their neighborhood. What would happen in the county if there's no heat? You're not in school. They fix the heat, you come back to school. You notice last year when they had that big thing about the air conditioning in the beginning of the year, we were dying in the rooms that 1 week. We had this blistering heat, and Dr. Thornton, who got fired, thank God, and we knew he would not last. He was terrible. No offense, but he was terrible. He said nothing. And they have a, if it's 92 degrees or 920 degrees by 11 o'clock or something, they close the school. I mean, it's 92 degrees. It's got to be 92 degrees, right? So we had no heat, but all that story came out about the county schools without air conditioning. Everybody was in uproar. Not a peep about Baltimore City until like 8 months later. Oh, and Baltimore City, by the way, doesn't have. Now, you think it's hot in the county. It's much hotter in the city with much older buildings that are dilapidated. These kids were useless, the teachers were useless.
If you had the power to make some changes, you could wave a wand and you could actually get the mayor to do something for you, or you could change something in North Avenue, what would you want to see change? What policy would you want put in place? Who would you want to see in charge?
Well, the first thing is, without discipline, you have no control. So if you're not going to enforce the law, if you're not going to enforce the rules, if you're not going to make sure the school environment's safe, you can forget any other thing you're trying to do. And so that's the first thing. The other thing is, I would have real food. Spend the money, get people in there cooking food. We know there's a direct correlation to kids' behavior. And for a lot of kids like me, when I was a kid, that was probably the best meal I get every day. So a lot of these kids aren't eating well, and what they are eating is poisonous and toxic. So you got to change the food. You also have to have, to me, schools like the extension of the Department of Social Work. There should be a whole, health facility in there. The school should be open to the wider community. It shouldn't just be babysitting kids during the day. It should be adult classes. The facilities should be able to be used by the community. It should be an administration in there in the evening, not just in the morning, to make sure that the school and the people's money, they're spending this money, that they can use the pool, they can use the gym, they can, get people to organize those things. It should be a community center. That's what they're paying for.
Why you decided to come forward and why you want to talk?
Well, for years we were always told that if we share any information with the press or reporters or whatever, we could get fired, which I thought was interesting. I haven't seen that rule anywhere. But you were always very wary of, talking to people about what's going on in the school system for fear of retaliation in some way. But it's just to the point now where I really don't care. And people need to know what's going on. And the people who do know, I think, they either, don't want to deal with it because these issues are so pervasive, or, they're intimidated and they go a different direction.
This is Taya Graham and Stephen Janis reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland.